everyone, and welcome to another episode of Neighbors Helping Neighbors podcast, brought to you by the Robertson County Democratic Party. My name is Kaylee, and I am here with my co-host, Morgan.
Hello.
And today we are going to be talking a little bit more about immigration in a little bit of a different vein than we did a couple episodes ago. But before we jump into that, I will start, as always, with just some important dates of events that are coming up. So this Tuesday, March 17th, will be the next party meeting at the Springfield Senior Center at 6 p.m. We're going to have a guest speaker, Joshua Sales, who is going to run for U.S. District 7 in Congress. So come hear him speak, get an idea of what he stands for. It should be an interesting talk. And then afterwards, we're going to have a potluck dinner. So we hope to see you there. And then a reminder that a couple Saturdays from now, Saturday, March 28th, is the No Keens protest from 2 to 4 at the Robertson County Courthouse in downtown Springfield. We hope to see you there, even if you can only come for an hour or less. You know, it doesn't have to be the whole 2 hours. We hope to at least see you make an appearance. And then want to throw this out there now, just as a heads up to get it in the back of your mind now, that if you are not already registered to vote, Monday, April 6th is the last day to register to vote to be eligible in the May county primary. So we will have resources in the description for how you can go register if you're unsure of where to even start. But Monday, April 6th, again, is the last day to register to vote for the May primary. Now, following up from our first immigration episode, we had talked about a whole bunch of bills, kind of what's in those bills, and have been posting hearing dates and when all of these things are being talked about in the legislature, so you can go protest them, oppose them if you do have the time and ability. Again, I will have in the description just progress updates on those bills, when hearing dates are for some of them. Monday, March 16th, Tuesday, March 17th, and Wednesday, March 18th all have various subcommittee meetings. But we kind of wanted to circle back on the immigration topic because a lot of these bills are making progress and passing through the legislature. A lot of these have either passed the Senate and are waiting on the House to wrap up and approve the bill, or just they're approved with amendments. So we wanted to kind of take a step back, talk about immigration more at a higher level, and talk about just some myths and misconceptions that are out there that seem to really be driving these bills, both at a local level and at a national level. But I guess anything to add before we dive into some of these misconceptions?
No, sounds good to me. Let's go.
All right. So, obviously the big one that seems probably most relevant now is that ICE is doing all of this work because they're taking the quote unquote criminals out of our country. And frankly, that's just not true.
No, it's not, because they are going for anyone who has a status of crossing the border legally, which this is one misconception that people will say, where, oh, they're criminals because they crossed the border illegally. No, that is what's known as a civil crime or a civil infraction, not a criminal infraction. It is supposed to be paid with a fine, with a punishment that does not include any form of jail time or incarceration. It is also you're also supposed to automatically be put into the immigration pathway system that the judicial branch has, where they go to see their own immigration judges, have their own immigration lawyers, and that is separate from the civil case. And I can't emphasize more that it is a civil infraction. It is not a criminal infraction.
A common equivalent that I hear it compared to a lot is it's basically the same as jaywalking, right? It's something that you can get in trouble for, but really, when's the last time someone has ever got a ticket for jaywalking? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's by the loosest definition, it is a crime, but it's really only enforced because of all of the fear mongering and all of the, all of these misconceptions that we're going to get into around immigrants that make it feel like entering the country illegally is a a bigger crime than what it actually is.
Yes. And another point to add to that is another reason why it is a civil infraction is because if it is a civil infraction, then they don't have to provide a lawyer for you if you cannot afford one. Public defenders are provided for criminal cases, not civil cases. So that's just another fun way that the system tries to hang immigrants out in the cold that don't quite know what our system is, but may have heard that crossing the border is just a civil infraction and may think, oh, well, I'll cross the border, I'll automatically turn myself in, and I'll start going through the system. It's not a criminal case, so it should be fine. Well, very first thing you'll find out is if you ain't got the money for a lawyer, you don't get one until you get into the immigration court system.
And I think that's a good point, kind of in the same vein as another common misconception is, I mean, the phrase you hear all the time is, well, they should just come here legally or they should just do it, quote unquote, the right way. When, I mean, have you seen our justice system lately? Like it is broken beyond belief, not even in relation to immigration policies, but just, I mean, especially ever since COVID, like just the backlogs of work that the judicial system has right now is insane. Like there's no way to reasonably expect someone to be able to follow the legal immigration process in a reasonable amount of time.
Yes, I have heard numbers coming up even before COVID and all of the current new problems that the immigration system has with processing people. Is that if you stay in your host country and you do everything exactly the way the United States wants you to do it, it can take up to 10 years before you come into the country. And if you come from a country that doesn't have the best security situation, that doesn't have the best policing situation, then 10 years is a long time to wait if you have the equivalent of the mafia knocking at your door. Say you live in El Salvador, say you live in Ecuador, say you live in a Central American country where the government isn't the only people you answer to. 10 years is often too long. They would almost rather chance running the border and going to an American jail because at least that's better than the situation they're in. And also, they're told is a civil infraction, so they
Mm.
don't think the punishment's going to be that bad.
Well, and I mean, really, I feel awful even just saying it, but as terrible as it feels to say, the inside of an American jail in a lot of ways is safer than some of the situations that some of these people are coming from. Like
Exactly.
it is, I feel like this is a very complex issue that you just cannot look at it black and white and say, well, either you come here legally or you don't come here at all. Like
Yes.
when your life is on the line, when your kids' lives are on the line, like that there are so many external circumstances that could be influencing someone's decision to come here that like the asking them to do something the legal way, while maybe is the ideal state that we would all like to be in, you're virtually asking the impossible.
Yes, I would absolutely love to say that I support going the legal route 100% of the time in all circumstances. I would love to say that. The problem with saying that is that the legal route is horrendously overcomplicated, takes way too long, and for a lot of people is fundamentally broken in a way that makes it not an option for them. The only option they end up having is running that border because of how archaic and slow and overcomplicated our immigration system is, and also not to mention how expensive it is because you will need a lawyer to navigate all of these different laws and bills and measures that you're going to have to abide by.
And I know you were looking this up the other day, and I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but for those listening who may not be aware, the US only gives out a certain number of permits, essentially, or visas to
Yes.
allow people in for any status, whether it's seeking asylum or refugee status or just a random, lottery draw of you're trying to come here. Like, we only allow so many people in legally anyway. So if you're trying to follow the legal process and then the US says, well, sorry, you could come here, but we've reached the cap, so you'll have to wait another year and hope you get picked next year. Again, to your point, when your life is on the line, you don't necessarily have a year to wait.
Yes. And furthermore, these arbitrary numbers of how many legal permanent residents can be let into the country and become legal permanent residents, it's one was established in 1990 and has not been updated since the 90s. And two, like you said, with that lottery system, it's only 10,000 people that get through with that lottery system. It was originally created to help Irish people immigrate during the Troubles, during the 70s and the 80s, when Ireland was having a very large problem with the IRA. And now is just being kept around as something that can be pointed at as, oh, yeah, we let a lot of people in. 10,000 every year is not a lot of people
Not at all.
comparatively. And there's like 40,000 people can be let in for this specific category, but only like 300 people can be let in for another specific category. The numbers make no sense. They're very arbitrary, and they lead to these 10-year backlogs that you start to see, sometimes 12-year, 15-year, that cause people to just end up running the border. It's a system that needs revamped. The numbers need updated at the very, very least. And if we're going to start talking about coming here the legal way, well, we need to start talking about how stupidly complicated the legal way is and
Yeah.
how it oftentimes you just can't.
Yeah. It is very, it at least to me feels very disingenuous to look at a group of people and say, well, we wouldn't mind having you here. It's just that you did it the wrong way, so too bad, try again. But we're telling you to try again with a system that is broken that will almost certainly never allow you to actually come in legally. So to me, that just comes off as, well, we don't actually want you here.
Yes, look at it from their perspective. It's an incredibly crappy thing for the United States of America to do, to say, yes, we want hardworking, honest people to come to this country. And then when the hardworking and honest people show up and say, hey, we would like to be a part of your country, they say, okay, navigate these 1,000 hoops that takes years to navigate. Good luck. Maybe you get in, maybe you don't. Ha ha. That leaves the immigrant saying, well, do you really want me here? Or should I just not follow your process? That leaves the refugee saying, I'm definitely not following your process. That process is stupid. I'm just going to get onto your land because your land's safer. It's a smack in the face, really, to everyone trying to show up to say that we're not going to revamp this system. We are not going to make it better, but you still have to navigate it. And if you don't, we're going to treat you very, very badly. Which comes to another misconception that I hear is that, Immigration and Border Services, they're acting ethically within the law to handle all of these people, and the deportation isn't such a bad thing. No. Have you ever heard of punishment by process? These deportation facilities are not acting up to code. ICE is not acting up to code. Border Patrol is not acting up to code. And we are seeing some very, very bad situations rise out of that, like people dying in these detention facilities, or like Alex Peretti dying right on the street, even though he had a constitutional right to carry that firearm. And
Well, then I can't, should have looked this up, but I can't remember now off the top of my head. There was a guy who used to work for ICE or for DHS, whichever one, who recently testified in front of Congress that ICE has cut, what is it, like 40% of their training programs for new recruits, and the courses that they cut as part of that training program is what authority they do and do not have as ICE agents, how to de-escalate situations, what, like, just the basic what the Constitution says about law enforcement. Like they are purposefully cutting all of these very important training programs, and the you almost can't blame the new recruits because they're not being taught the law. I mean, don't get me wrong; it's on every person to know the Constitution and the law. The ICE agents do have some sort of accountability for following unconstitutional orders, but when they're not being trained and just being forced out onto the field so that this administration can meet their quota.
Yes, which, by the way, there are multiple articles you can look up where Stephen Miller has set a quota for how many people need to be detained and deported every month. So that is very much a thing. But it is also a thing that with this whistleblower coming out and talking about how almost 50% of the ICE training has been eliminated. Also, you're getting news coming out about how they're using administrative warrants instead of judicial warrants to kick down people's doors, which is a constitutional violation against unreasonable searches and seizures. And just so everybody knows, an administrative warrant is essentially some other guy in ICE telling them that it's okay to do that. It is not a judge signing off as the Constitution intends. It is just a department telling itself that it is okay.
Yeah, because I mean, to add to that, a warrant that comes from a judge is usually because there is reasonable suspicion to suspect that there is something worth searching for.
Yes.
An administrative warrant is just basically the equivalent of we want to, so we're gonna.
Yes.
I mean, am I right? Is that?
Yes, absolutely. An administrative warrant is when an administrator within ICE signs off on that piece of paper that says they are allowed to kick in your door and detain you. Now, they are not allowed to do that just because that administrative warrant says so. The Constitution says if that is their domicile, if that is where their residence is, you are not allowed to kick down that door unless a judge signs off telling you you are allowed to do so. Yet they are doing so. And that is not acting lawfully. That is not acting within even the scope of the Constitution. So,
and kind of in the same vein, something that we didn't mention, talking about just do it legally. Recently, ICE has been pulling people out of line for their naturalization ceremonies, like or people that are going to the courthouses to do the legal process. Like there are people out there trying to do it the right way, and ICE is still taking them.
Yes, we are getting lots of articles and news coming out from multiple states, Tennessee and Robertson County included, talking about how these immigrants are showing up to their court hearings about their immigration status, and after paying their civil fine for crossing the border illegally and getting their next appointments and such, there are ICE agents waiting outside of the doors ready to just detain them and take them to a detention facility, which is not how this process is supposed to work. After they pay their civil fine, they are supposed to be put into the immigration court system with another appointment to an immigration judge. They're not supposed to just be whisked off to the detention facility, oh, well, you're out of here style. That is really just abhorrent to the spirit of how this country has sold itself to the rest of the world, that we are the great melting pot where you can come and have a good life if you wish.
And I think that's a good misconception too that people seem to have, is that per the Constitution, every person on U.S. soil has the right to due process.
Yes.
It does not matter your citizenship status. It is if your body is physically on U.S. soil, you have the right to due process.
Yes.
And I feel like it's important to call out that the reason that exists is because without due process, you cannot prove that you are a citizen or not.
Yes.
So like all of the things about, or the arguments I hear of, well, I'll just show them my papers or I'll just show them my passport. Like, just show them your papers. You don't need due process. ICE, if they wanted, in this kind of hypothetical world, could just throw your passport away and say, well, I don't believe that you are a citizen, so I'm just going to choose to ignore this and destroy your passport. And now you don't have proof. This system is in place to give a fair and legal approach to proving whether or not you belong here. And if you do not belong here, the power is in the hands of someone else to determine what happens.
Yes.
ICE is not judge, jury, executioner as much as they have been acting like that lately. Like, that is not their job. Their job is capture and take to place for someone else to decide what to do with them.
Yes. And from what we're seeing with the current new modern approach to ICE is whether or not you have papers or proof that you are a legal permanent resident, they're still taking you to that detention facility. We're hearing a lot of statements from ICE talking about how they need to take you to the facility to verify your papers, to make sure they're not fake, to make sure that you haven't forged your identity. Well, you're still getting taken to the detention facility, and that's what I like to call punishment by process, ladies and gentlemen, where even if you are a legal permanent resident, they're still going to mess with you. Why? Because they might not even believe that your credentials are acceptable. Or who knows, they may lose it in the facility. We have had cases of people who say they are legal residents going into these detention facilities and then getting deported anyways. And they have to sue in order to be made whole from that event because they were legal permanent residents.
And I mean, this administration even is constantly changing the definitions of being here legally. Like, a lot of immigrants that were granted certain protections under either the Biden administration or, prior administrations, now all of a sudden this administration is saying those aren't valid anymore. So they did do it the right way, or the legal way. And now all of a sudden, through no fault of their own, they're suddenly illegal, even though they haven't done anything. So until this, again, it's not as black and white as do it the right way, come here legally, follow ICE's orders, when there's so much muddy in the waters now.
Yes.
With ICE specifically. A big one that I wanted to touch on, apart from all of the ICE stuff, is I think it's a common argument against those numbers you brought up earlier of like, well, we can only let so many people in because of XYZ. And the big argument that we always hear is they're a strain on the economy. They take American jobs. They take all of our resources. Like, we can't support all of these new people because we can't even support ourselves. I guess, would you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let's just get this straight. Anyone who goes into any store, especially in the state of Tennessee, is going to pay sales tax. If you purchase something in this state, even if it is an online transaction on your phone, you are paying almost 10% in sales tax to the state of Tennessee for every purchase. Immigrants, illegal or not, will pay that sales tax. They pay millions in sales tax every year in multiple states all across the country. So for that in and of itself blows open the whole they don't pay no taxes talk.
And I did pull up a statistic real quick just on the amount of taxes that immigrants typically pay. And according to this article from the American Immigration Council, at least 50% of undocumented immigrant households file income tax returns using tax identification numbers. So that's a number that the IRS will give you if you don't have a Social Security number to help track your taxes and pay taxes. And in 2015, 4.4 million filers who used that tax identification number paid over $5.5 billion with a B dollars in payroll and Medicare taxes and $23.6 billion in total taxes, according to the IRS. And again, that was in 2015. So they are giving us billions of dollars every year. And on top of that, they don't get to benefit from any of these services. So this $5.5 billion that they've paid in Medicare taxes, they will never see any return on that because they don't qualify for Medicare.
Yes. And that leads to the next part of this misconception. No, they don't get social entitlements. No, they don't get to withdraw social illegal immigrants do not get to withdraw Social Security. They do not get to withdraw welfare. They do not get to withdraw SNAP. They do not get to withdraw any entitlement program that uses taxpayer money. Let's just get that out there right now. They're not
Yeah.
all coming here for the welfare.
And so, just a quick clarification, maybe somewhere that this has stemmed from is mixed households can qualify. So if parents come here illegally, then have a kid here and their kid is a U.S. citizen, the parents can file on behalf of the child who is a U.S. citizen to receive benefits. And I think that kind of
Oh no, we're gonna let
alters the statistics.
oh no, we're gonna let the child eat. Oh no, that's such a crime.
But I think people read that as, oh, well, there are undocumented people that live in this household, so therefore the undocumented person must be receiving the benefits. And that's not true. It's just the statistic is maybe a little murky because it is a mixed household.
Yeah, no. In that situation, the U.S. citizen kid is receiving the resources, but since the kid is a kid and probably can't write his name yet, the parents are being used as officials to disperse that resource to the child.
And another just kind of smaller detail that also potentially feeds into this misconception is that lawfully present immigrants who, green card holders can receive some of those public benefits, but typically they must wait at least 5 years, and there's very little exception for that 5-year period. So yes, there are some people that do receive those benefits, but again, they're green card holders, lawful permanent residents, whatever status they have. And again, they have to be here for 5 years before they can even start benefiting from those. And so in those 5 years, presumably they have been working, contributing to the economy, paying taxes. They're not just sitting around for 5 years waiting for the timer to expire and like, oh, yay, my 5 years is up. I can now mooch off the system.
Yeah. And also, I would feel remiss if I didn't mention this, that we're talking about federal systems and programs here.
Yes.
Each state, like you may get a lot of people talking about how the state of California will give some state entitlements to undocumented immigrants. And yeah, that's the state's right to do so. States' rights within the Constitution. That does not count when we are talking about federal entitlement systems. The state of California can do what it wants when it comes to what money it gives to who. So just wanted to mention that. I've had a lot of people try to use California to argue with me against this point. So I just
No,
to help you out.
It's a good
there.
point to bring up that this is at a federal level. And when we're talking federal immigration policy that is informing state and local immigration policy, I think that is an important distinction to make. But along with the economy, also, we touched on taxes, but also coming back to the idea that they're stealing our jobs. I mean, again, it feels silly to say that that's just not true, but it is a very common argument that we can't let X number of people in because then there won't be enough jobs for the rest of us.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to say this right now. Were they really stealing a job you were never going to work? Were they really stealing that roofing job where you have to stay on a roof for about 12 hours a day, probably out in the hot sun or even the freezing cold during the winter? Were you going to do that job? I don't see a lot of people other than immigrants wanting to do those jobs. And so, in fact, if anything, they're a boon to our economy. We are seeing now with this extremely aggressive anti-immigration push from the administration that the agricultural sector is now struggling with work. The construction sector is now struggling with work. All of those hard blue-collar style jobs that the Native American population doesn't want to do because they would rather go do something that doesn't break their back after 30 years. Those were supported by our immigrants. Yes, legal and illegal. Both categories worked work very, very hard in this country, oftentimes at jobs that really we wouldn't do anyways.
Yeah, my kind of favorite way that I've heard other people summarize it before, I can't give you a direct quote from anyone, but is the idea that native born American workers and immigrant workers are not in direct competition with one another. We are complementary to one another. Immigrants fill in the gaps that, us native born Americans don't have, and us native born Americans fill in the gaps that immigrants maybe don't have. And we build each other up. I mean, again, a rising tide raises all ships. I mean, we help each other by filling the gaps that each culture or community is lacking. And I wanted to point out there was a study done, and this is from the um, bushcenter.org. This is from America's Advantage Handbook on Immigration and Economic Growth, which is a recent Bush Institute report, showed that immigrants are more likely than native born workers to create jobs. They start businesses at nearly twice the rate of native born Americans and are more likely to be self employed. In addition, immigrant owned businesses with employees other than the owner employ on average 11 additional workers.
Yeah. Here in Springfield, Tennessee, I see at least a dozen businesses that are very much marketed to the Hispanic population and to the immigrant population. Right down in the square, right across from the courthouse, there is a Mexican restaurant that it is owned by immigrants, by people who came from Mexico. It is, yes, all of those businesses would not be there if it wasn't for those immigrants. And it is not a guarantee that native born Americans would fill those businesses either. They may just sit abandoned and empty.
I mean, and that's the whole, we love to tout this idea from, America was created as the cultural melting pot of all of these different places and ideas and cultures, and is where you could come to be you and do what you wanted to do, believe what you wanted to believe. And now all of a sudden it feels like we're turning into, well, if you're not from here, you don't belong. Newsflash, none of us are from here except the Native Americans. Like this idea that we need to preserve our American culture. American culture is the combination of all the other cultures. The only way we preserve American culture is by preserving all of the cultures that have helped build it up.
Yeah. Yeah. If anything, because we're now seeing this big propaganda push from the Republican Party, the wider conservative movement, that there is a very specific definition of what being an American is. And that was never the case. If anything, the only unifying definition of what being an American is in that context is us wanting the freedom to be what we want to be and not having someone tell us that we can't. Now, all of a sudden, we're not just telling a whole populations of people that they have to act a certain way to be American. We're telling them that we don't even want them to be American, that we don't want them here because they committed a civil mistake early on and had the audacity to stay here and try to fix it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so frustrating to hear all of this rhetoric about, we don't need immigrants or we don't want immigrants here. And then you'll go out to dinner for Mexican food on Cinco de Mayo, or you'll go out and enjoy your Japanese dinner or, your Korean dinner or whatever it is. Like, you're going to participate in all of these cultural activities, but then not welcome the people who brought you that culture in the first place. Like, it's just so contradictory or even hypocritical, maybe.
Yeah, it really feels like you only see culture as something that entertains you and that's something that provides for you, not somebody else's experience and how they were raised and taught to be, because that is culture. And America is the blending of cultures. The United States of America is a blending of states, of different little mini nations all deciding to work together who have their own smaller subcultures and such.
Yeah, I mean, even just thinking about the different regions of the United States, like the Northeast versus the Midwest
Yeah.
versus the South. Like, being someone who was originally from the Midwest coming down to the South was, I don't want to say culture shock was maybe a little much, it wasn't that big of a shock, but also just like, I don't say yes, ma'am, yes, sir, because that's not how I was raised. I just say thank you or yes, and my respect is implied in my tone of voice or the way that I act around you. I don't need to call you sir or ma'am to show you that I respect you. But down in the South, if you don't call someone sir or ma'am, I mean, you're
I have had a couple jobs where because I didn't use sir and ma'am, I've gotten written up before for lack of respect. So, yeah, as someone here from the South, that is a cultural difference, an example of a cultural difference that largely we try to accept amongst each other. Why is it suddenly so different from Mexican culture or Ecuadorian culture or South American culture in general? Why is that suddenly so egregious? Or Middle Eastern culture? Why is it suddenly so egregious if someone decides to wear a scarf on their head? Like we're we are getting to a very dangerous place where we are starting to arbitrarily pick who is American and who isn't, when that defeats the whole purpose of this great experiment, that this is supposed to be a land where you don't have to worry about having to exactly be this one definition. You can be who you want to be because the Constitution gives you the rights and freedoms that allow that. If we suddenly just start tromping all over that to end illegal immigration, well, we're just not looking at the right problems, in my opinion. Yeah, you can end illegal immigration by fixing the legal immigration and truly actually welcoming people into this country.
yep. And it's not th- this is a very difficult topic to come up with solutions for, right? I mean, it would take years, if not decades, to fix our current system and get it in a place that is manageable and also treats people with, dignity and respect and lets them, continue to exist in a peaceful way while still following this legal process and also not fearing for their lives while they wait. But we also have to, address the downsides, I guess, of just a growing population. I mean, we can't, despite everything we just said about how they, contribute to the economy and they don't take our jobs, like, having more people just does require more effort to maintain that population. But that's where the revamping of the system comes in, is we have to accommodate these people. And so you get this back and forth, how do we do that well and take care of them without hurting ourselves? But also, we don't want these people to get hurt. So it is, I understand some of the concerns from the Republican side when it comes to our systems that we currently have in place can't necessarily support these many people, but that's why we have to fix our systems.
Yeah, like
Hmm.
the way to navigate that extremely complicated situation is by fixing systems and figuring out how to fix those systems so that it is the most fair for everyone involved, not a guy with a mask and a plate carrier and an M4 assault rifle kicking you down into the ground and then throwing you into a van just to be thrown into a cell with 30 other people in a detention facility, which is what they're officially calling them nowadays. They look a lot like camps to me, but they are officially called detention facilities.
I mean, they are a place where people are being concentrated.
Into one spot.
That if
So-
you if you would like to call that a concentration camp,
Use your own best judgment on
that's
that.
that you can decide if that is an accurate word. But I mean,
Yeah, and the problem is we don't even really have the political situation to fix that system anymore because the misconceptions and the rhetoric has become so bad. We can't bipartisanly come together to do the legal work required to make a better immigration system, which would bring illegal immigration down, which would bring legal immigration up, and furthermore increase the quality of immigrants that we get, because more and more people will see it as a viable pathway instead of staying in their home countries and trying to make it do with what they've got there. They might be able to generate more value here if the immigration system is better. See, we have nothing to lose and everything to gain by doing that. The problem is we have turned this immigration problem into a political fight for decades, where at this point each side judges each other morally on which side they're on, and that's just such an unhelpful way to look and fix this. We're not fixing the problem, we're using it as a political weapon against each other, and while the problem stagnates and becomes worse and worse and worse.
And I think part of that, and this might be the last misconception that we touch on, is the language that is being used when talking about immigrants is, I think, furthering that divide. So all the time, on and frankly on both sides of the media spectrum, but especially from the more right-leaning sides in this administration, especially, I hear all the time the people are referred to as illegals. People are not illegal. They
Yes.
do illegal things.
It is not illegal to be a person.
But you cannot illegally be a person. That's can't be a thing.
You've heard me use both of these terms in this episode: illegal immigrant and undocumented immigrant. That's just part of the propaganda divide on this subject when we're talking about people.
Yeah.
We're
And I mean, I'm guilty of it too. I'm saying all this and I catch myself doing it too. It's easy to do because it's what you hear all the time. And that's kind of the whole point of why they're doing it, I'm sure, is to create that mindset in everyone as a propaganda tool of these aren't people, they are illegals.
Yeah. And I think deep down the American public recognizes that, otherwise there would not be a fight happening over President Trump saying that he would only take the criminals, and then more and more people are finding out that he is really taking more like everyone instead of just the criminals.
But I mean, it's been a lead up, right? Like, this is nothing new. Even, back in his first administration, but especially this one, constantly referring to a group of people as criminals or murderers or any other of the horrendous things that have been said, in reference to these people. Sure, I'm sure they exist. There are immigrants that are criminals. Guess what? There's thousands, millions of Americans that are criminals and murderers that, frankly, half the time we don't even do anything about.
And by the way, I'm just going to get this out here since we are now on this subject. No, Haitian people were not eating cats and dogs. No, they don't tend to like to do that. That is not just what those people do. And just this wider dehumanization of people who are people just like you and me, have thoughts just like you and me, have grown up from being a baby all the way up to an adult just like you and me. Sometimes not even that far, especially with a lot of children that come to this country. Why? Because it looks like a place where they can be safe and secure. That these people, they are not illegals, they are not undocumented numbers that need to be kicked out so that everybody else can have a prosperous future. No, we can build a prosperous future with all of these people as well. We need to get past all of this reckless dehumanization, because frankly, it's immigrants today, but it could be you tomorrow. Who knows how far the goalpost goes on who is American and who is not, who is illegal and who is not.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's immigrants, but, assuming they get their way, once all the immigrants are gone, It's not going to stop there. It never does.
Yeah, we've already seen the administration threaten certain democratic organizations like Act Blue with being domestic terrorist organizations. And we've already seen them use the domestic terrorism language in conjunction with immigrants. So it would be a real easy slide to just determine who's illegal and who's not.
Well, I mean, they called Alex Preddy and Renee Good, didn't they? Domestic terrorists when all of that happened in Minnesota. Like,
Yes.
you're not a domestic terrorist just for disagreeing with something the administration is
Yes.
doing.
And you're also, since those videos have come out with Alex Preddy, you're not a domestic terrorist if you kick out a taillight. You're not a domestic terrorist if you shove a cop. If anything, you have committed a simple crime that requires arresting and being brought before a judge, not being shot.
Yeah. Well,
Which,
again, ICE is not judge, jury, executioner, or they're not supposed to be.
yeah. And it gets me very angry with how brazenly this administration and just so many supporters of this administration just can't see past the propaganda of it all and see that these are people trying to navigate an absolutely overcomplicated and messed up system that nobody has the willpower or want, it seems, to fix so that we can finally put this issue to bed.
Yeah. I mean, frankly, I would encourage any of you listening at home, even if you are, if you are an American, US born citizen, I would encourage you just Google what the process would be for gaining citizenship if you were an immigrant and just try and decipher all of the forms and all of the language and the order in which everything needs to be done. Like, go act as if you were, an immigrant trying to come to the US legally and just get a taste of how complex that process is.
And then when you do that, try to imagine also doing that when your home country hasn't taught you the English to read those forms.
Yeah, maybe it's a better exercise to look at a foreign country whose language you don't speak and try and figure out the immigration process for that country.
The problem with that is that the system could actually work better and be easier to navigate.
Fair
so
enough.
you really kind of need to look at the complicated monstrosity of the U.S. system. It is so complicated that I cannot explain it to you all at this point in this podcast. A lawyer could not explain it to you if he had 8 hours with you in front of him to do it with. Like, I just want to get by how multifaceted and insanely complicated this problem is. It is not just the case of a flood of malicious, illegal, foreign people are coming here to cause all kinds of trouble, which is what the Republican administration is trying to make it sound like it is, and what the Republicans have been trying to make it sound like it is for decades. That the only people that come across the border illegally are bad people who are looking to do bad things, when that is just not the case. In many cases, it is the thing that they can do. The only thing, apart from, I don't know, get killed in their own home country. Like,
yeah. And a common argument that I have heard, both in relation to U.S. immigration, but even in relation to immigration in other countries, like I know this is big in the UK, is a lot of people in the UK complain, well, why don't you just stay in the first safe country that you get to? Like, why go through all the trouble to get on a boat and cross the channel to get to England if you could have just stayed in Spain or Germany? And, a similar argument here. Why don't you just stay in Mexico or stay in one of the countries along the way on your trip up to the US? And that's frankly none of your business, in my opinion. Like, I saw a study in the UK was done. They surveyed UK citizens and asked, if you were fleeing the UK, would you want the choice of which country you ended up in? And like 70+% of them said yes, they would want the choice. Like, it doesn't really matter if they do have other options. Like, if this is the option that they feel is best for them and what they want for their families and what is going to make them the safest, then why would we not want to help in any way that we can?
Yes, yes. It's very much an issue where when you say something like that, you really show that you're not extending your morals to that group of people, but you would extend it to yourself.
Yeah.
You would want the choice of which country you would like to immigrate to if your life was in danger and you had to get out right then, right there, now. But you're not going to extend it to other people who would have the exact same situation. It just feels so gross. And we just wanted to put some put some misconceptions to bed on that and to let you know that there is really a lot of very nasty propaganda that has been at work for a long time regarding illegal immigration. And there's a lot that they're not talking about, like how complicated the system is, or and how hard it is to get through the system, or how we don't even follow our own laws once you're in the country and in the system, which makes things worse for everybody involved and really makes it so that we're missing out on a lot of prosperity that we could have if the system itself for immigration was fixed in a more morally responsible and just responsible in general way.
Well, just if it was formed in a way that treated these people like they're welcomed, like we want them to be here versus this attitude of, well, we'll take you if we have to because you have nowhere else to go. Like that, that shouldn't be the attitude. The attitude should be, we want you to come here. We want you to feel safe, but we also want you to feel included in this culture and this, environment.
Yeah, wasn't something on the Statue of Liberty about bring me you're poor, you're sick, and you're hungry and all of that? Well, at least one political party in this country doesn't seem to believe in that anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's a fun analogy, even too. Uh, Do you really think that all of the people that immigrated here via Ellis Island had to go through all of this crap? They showed up, had some form of identification and that said their name, and then they were like, "Okay, come on in."
Yeah,
Like, I mean, that's very high level. There was a little more there was a little more that went into it than
yeah.
that, but it was by no means the process that it is now.
Yes, exactly. You didn't have to prove yourself 10 different ways to Sunday,
Yeah.
like with the process nowadays. And so we hope you enjoyed that. We hope you enjoyed a bit more of just a conversational bit on how you're not really being told the truth on the immigration system from the powers that be.
And hopefully, like we said, if this is stuff that you already kind of knew or suspected some of these things were missed, hopefully you at least learned something, heard some data or anything that we said that can help you kind of push back against people when you hear this maybe out in the wild.
Absolutely. Well, you got anything else to say?
That's it for this week.
And that's it for me. Thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you have a wonderful night.
And we will see you next time.